Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. What an amazing blessing we have to have Brother Leven. He is a Benedictine monk from Atchison, Kansas. And what a blessing you are to the church. And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Rhonda. It's always good to be able to share what the Lord's done and yeah, just to promote vocations in the church.
Yeah, so I would love to know more about you. Tell us how you grew up and about family life
Yeah.
and anything you want us to know about that.
Yeah, sure. So sometimes Sarah clubs have asked me to speak and tell me the story of my vocation, and I say, because those are typically families, parents. I say there are three things that my parents gave me that I think have been foundational for my discernment. Firstly, they gave me unconditional love, which is, very difficult to do. As I get older and I see, my friends and family members and come to understand what parenting costs and the eternal patience that it requires, it's very difficult to give unconditional love. But having been given that, my discernment opened up so much easier than what I see with some young men who discern and some converts who have come through. Some stayed with us, some left. It's clear that I've received a gift of unconditional love. Secondly, my parents gave me a conviction that doing the good would satisfy me, which is different than like a guilt complex that I better darn well do the good. My dad specifically, I remember the way that he ran his business. He's a small business owner. And the way that he witnessed to that, it was just clear that he believed in principles, he followed the principles, and he was genuinely a happy guy. And so they gave me that. And then thirdly, and this one I think is somewhat underrated, they gave me, they had a real affection for my destiny. And I use the word destiny very intentionally because a destiny implies a call and an end that is beyond the scope of a parent's imagination and my imagination too. They had an affection for my destiny over any specific plans that they might have had. I think this is one of the main traps of like really good parents is that you want good things for your children. And because you have more years and you're wiser and you have more experience, you have a sense of what that ought to look like. And if the kid goes in another direction, it's very hard to let go. But my parents were, I don't want to say they were perfect, but they were very good at it. Not being uninterested, but giving me freedom. And so through my high school years, I was kind of, I wasn't the worst, but I was kind of a wild child. I was sneaking out. I was doing all the partying stuff, poor relationships, bad choices, but within kind of some real reasonable limits. I was never like self-destructive. And so my parents, aware of that, I think gave me a certain amount of freedom with these three gifts, right? What they didn't give me, and this is also notable, I think, what they never gave me really was a strong sense of piety. That's something that I had to discover for myself. And in some ways, I think can be secondary to those other first three things: unconditional love, a conviction that doing the good will satisfy, and a real affection for a child's destiny. But having received those, when I got to college and when, my stupid decisions caught up with me and I found that I wasn't really finding joy because of those three things, because I knew that I was loved, because I knew that the good was actually what I needed, and because I knew that my parents were going to support me if I sought the good, I was free to notice the good when it came along. And that's what happened for me, is that in college, midway through my time, I was sick of the decisions I was making. And so I came to Benedict College, the college that my monastery sponsors. And Benedict has a wonderful, vibrant, dynamic Catholic life here. Our students, from the time that I was a student, and it's only gotten better, are supported in exploring their faith. The intellectual life is stressed, but the faith life and the spiritual life is also nurtured, fostered, challenged, educated. And for me, that was decisive, because when I found myself unhappy and I looked around at my peers, there were peers who were praying every day and going to mass and who were looked like and felt like that related to their happiness. And, crazy idea, right?
Right.
So when I had this moment of crisis, so to speak, my solution wasn't like to change majors or to go to a new college. It was to start praying. And so the summer between my sophomore and junior year, I stayed at Benedict in college and was helping a professor do research. But the schedule was fairly light, and so I had a good amount of free time, honestly. But it's Atchison, Kansas, so I couldn't go clubbing. I couldn't get myself in trouble. It was a lot like a retreat, honestly. The solitude was a lot like a retreat. And so every day I got on my knees and I prayed the rosary. And I did that with devotion. And what I mean by devotion in this instance is an absolute seriousness about my business, a certainty that what I was doing was vitally important, and serious about verifying that God was for me and was with me. In other words, at the time, I had a mindset that I'm going to commit to this, and I did. I was on my knees every day for 3 months before I really had any epiphanies. And I had a mindset that, God, if you don't show up, I'm out of here. I'm done. Because I'm giving my heart, and if you're not going to receive it, I'm done. I'm out of here. And again, not in a ultimatum to God, but in a real seriousness about what I was up to. So midway through that time, in the beginning of August, I just had this deep awareness of the Lord's presence to me. In the sorrowful mysteries specifically, and it was completely new. It was completely new, and it became like the center of my life. It began just by continuing to pray, and then like adding more time, and then adding a little more time, and then adding a little more time, and getting a spiritual director, and changing some of my habits, and inviting my friends along, and being invited by friends. And so over the last 2 years of my time at Benedict, and I found my vocation just by kind of investing more and more in prayer. But again, I'll stress that my parents' love for my destiny was crucial, because throughout that time they saw me growing as a man, and they were supportive, and they were kind of freaked out by the monastery when that thing came up, because no one in my family's ever been a religious, but they were supportive because it was my destiny, and they loved me. Sorry, that was a longer,
beautiful,
much longer than you thought.
Great.
Yeah.
No, okay. So tell me, so you feel like the first time that you really felt a nudge to religious life was junior, senior in college? Or do you feel like it was earlier and then it was more convicted later, or?
Too. Honestly, the first time that I think I ever felt a call to religious life, I was, 8 to 10 years old. But not in the way you think. I remember driving with my dad, and in western Wichita, where I'm from, Wichita, Kansas, there's some Amish who live nearby, and we were driving by, and they were in their horse and buggy, and my dad told me about them, and I just remember like having this like deep impression of them, like it making an impact. Like, gosh, these people really believe what they believe. Like they're really doing something about it. Their life is really directed by this. And I think that was honestly probably my first like moment of admiration, of invitation in my life. From then up until college, almost nothing that I can remember at this point in time. And I think there's different reasons for that. Again, I think my parents, did not emphasize piety to us. So it was never suggested to me to consider being a priest or religious. But my parents deeply respected and vocalized their respect for our parish priest. And so it wouldn't have been, forbidden or discouraged either. But they didn't encourage it. And then two, I'm a religious brother. I'm not a priest. I'm not ordained. I'm consecrated, but I'm not ordained. And in Wichita, I think still to this present day, but when I was growing up, there are no male religious. It's all diocesan priests. So you have this amazing diocese, and it is an amazing diocese, where Catholic education is free if you tithe across the diocese. I don't think there's any diocese in the country that has that other than Wichita. It's an amazing thing. And they have all these seminarians, tons of young priests. So all these beautiful channels of grace, but they don't have male religious. And so I never saw what I'm called to be growing up. And I didn't see it until I came to Benedict in college. And then, when I came to Benedict, there was this process of conversion of removing the junk, discarding it out of my heart so that I could find what I actually really wanted. I didn't think that I wanted to pray growing up. I didn't think that I wanted to pray in high school. I thought it was boring. I thought nerds do that, So it was a surprise to me when I found, gosh, prayer is such a consolation, and like my humanity needs it, I need it and I want it, and it's fascinating.
So what was it about? I mean, I know that they were in front of you at the college. The monks were already there and in front of you. So that I think it's an easier, they're right there. Did you contemplate any other communities to be a part of, or was that once you figured it out, that was it?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. I only briefly contemplated other communities, and I can be a little boastful about my vocation story, because when I deal with guys in vocations work, and when I do vocations conferences, talks, I think there can be like a real tendency, I have to explore the charisms, which charism suits me. And I think there's a real risk here. The Lord is in charge, and the Lord calls us through the specific things that happen to us. And how they impact us, the waves they make inside of us, right? But it's not a it's not a consumerism. It's not I figure out which charism is right for me. And I think especially in the age of the internet, and like just the wealth that we have in this country, which allows us to get on a plane for much less than to get across the country for much less cost than it would have 100 years ago. There's this consumerism that can open up like, gosh, I have all these choices. Which one is the best? And that is not what it's about. And so
sometimes that can paralyze the men too and women. Absolutely. It can paralyze because there's so many choices. Absolutely. They're like, I just don't even know what to do. I'm just going to deal with that later, because it's just paralyzing. And hundreds of communities, hundreds.
Yep. And fear of missing out. If I commit to this, then what about this? No, it plays into like all the pitfalls for living a stable, committed vocation in this epic of the church. And so for me, I think largely out of ignorance and just like a real earnest and sincere commitment to what was happening in my life, which was the Lord coming to me in prayer through this campus and through the apostolate that these men had founded and given, was beautiful and attractive to me. I saw that I wanted to participate and continue in it. And I saw that there was a need, that there weren't floods of young monks coming in, and that I could be a part of the monastery continuing its mission. So it was this intersection of gratitude and like feeling like I had a debt to pay, and then like the opportunity to like find my identity, which was beginning to happen for me my senior year. Like before I wrote an article for the college ministry newspaper a couple years ago. And, each time you tell your story, something new comes, right? Like there's more given to you, more insight. And like what I realized when I wrote at that time was that like before, like in high school and like the first couple years of college, I was a pretty marginal person. Like there wasn't a lot of substance to me. I thought I was passionate about these things. I thought I had convictions. I thought I was willing to give myself, but I wasn't. I wasn't. And it was the encounter with the Lord that verified my identity for me, that purified my identity for me, and that gave me an identity. And after I've been in the monastery now for years, I continue to find things that are congenial to me, the things that like on a consumerist list, I would check the box, right? So in the monastery, we have this beautiful tradition of stability, a vow of stability, which means we stay in one place, we take a vow to this place, and we don't move to another mission house and then to another mission house. We don't go to formation here and then retire here. It's all in one location. And so we have an intergenerational brother. Just this morning, I was taking Father Matthew, who's 81 years old, to the hospital for an appointment. And I got to, I get to ride in the car with him, talk to him, listen to him, learn from him, and then also serve him. And that's a beautiful thing. I also get to be part of the heritage of this place. So each night at dinner, we do table reading during the evening meal. And one of the first readings that we do is a necrology, which is a short biography of one of the monks of a monk who has died on that day. And we've had 237 monks live and die as Benedictines here in Atchison. And so for most days of the year, we either have 1, 2, or 3 biographies. And you hear them year after year, and you begin to know the names. There's no new. I've been in the monastery for 15 years. There's not too many new names now, and it's my family, it's my heritage, and I get to receive that in the vow of stability. The other thing that has been kind of a new thing for me is just the history of liturgical music. Benedictines are liturgical. We live a liturgical life, rooted in the divine office and praying the Mass. And in the past few years, I've been invited into learning more about Gregorian chant and performing that at our Mass, along with our hymnody at the office, just learning about it. And it's been a beautiful discovery of the attractiveness of prayer, of the attractiveness of the church's prayer, and again, the tradition that's been given. So in the Benedictine life, there are many things that are congenial and like beautiful for me. But it continues to be, the primary thing continues to be God coming to me today in what's given to me today.
So tell me about this decision to be consecrated versus ordained.
Yeah.
What did that come down to for you?
Yeah, no, that's good. So in my discernment, my senior year, I received excellent guidance from the Apostles of the Interior Life, which is a religious community from Italy originally, but they have some houses here in the Kansas area and at KU campus and in Kansas City. They did a year-long kind of retreat program once a month called Samuel Group, which helped with discernment. And so I was led by their formation. And once the time came to get concrete with what my next steps could be, I had 5 of them, and 3 of them were lay, and then 2 of them were celibate. And the 2 that were celibate was being a priest in my home diocese, because that's what I knew. And the other one was joining the monastery. And I discerned that God was calling me to the monastery. So I didn't do the application for Wichita. I did it for the monastery, and I joined. But as I came in, my notion of what celibacy would look like, the configuration of it, so to speak, would have been like a diocesan priest or the priesthood, because that's what I grew up with. I didn't think of celibacy as a call that otherwise, priests are celibate. And so I assumed that I would be a priest. I assumed I'd be a priest, a spiritual director, and a philosophy professor. And I'm one of those now. So that gives you a sense of, the odds of, getting what you think you're going to get at the outset, right?
Right.
Midway through my time in the novitiate, though, as I was praying about my future and about, what the Lord was asking of me at the monastery, I realized that I at the time I didn't, and I still don't, I don't have a desire to celebrate the Mass. And so, the priestly life includes many components, some type of spiritual fatherhood and leadership in the church, dispensing the sacraments like, confession and baptism, stuff like that. And then many of those things are appealing to me. I feel called to be a part of. But the Mass, I don't feel called to celebrate the Mass, and I haven't. And that's like the center, that's the heart of it. And so when I realized that, it was very easy. I just let it go. And since that time, in my community, the needs of the community have always been very clear and insistent. There have been jobs for me to do, works for me to take on. And so I really haven't looked back. I haven't thought about the priesthood for any serious length of time in 14 years. So,
well, that's good. I mean, it's good to know that you're doing what God wants you to do and where you're supposed to be and serving in the way that he wants you to serve.
Absolutely.
I just think it's important for our listeners, because they don't hear from religious brothers very often, to know that vocation still exists. There are still men saying yes to this. And so I want them to know more about it and why it's so appealing. Why, or can be appealing depending on what God's calling you to.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's the same thing as for religious women. I mean, why do women become religious? For intimacy with Christ, to know him more deeply, to experience his sweetness in prayer, and to experience the deep significance of giving your life over to him. And it's the same thing for religious brothers. And it is different. I mean, like our monks who are priests have beautiful opportunities to dispense the mercy of God, to bring prayer to the Father's lap, in the Mass. It's also quite a burden. I mean, the responsibilities that come with it are very real. And the brothers spared that in some sense for other works. I mean, in our community, we have concelebration. And so I just was speaking about Gregorian chant. It's much easier for a brother to do the schola than it is for the priest, because you're supposed to be celebrating the Mass at different times. You're supposed to be around the altar. Brothers are free just to be over by the organ, singing along with the group. And so there's a real complementarity of ministries and roles in the church, broadly. And the brothers are part of that. So.
Well, they're a big part of it. And we're so thankful that you agreed to talk to us about being a religious brother today. Brother Leven, you're an amazing monk. We're so thankful for your yes, and God bless you and all of your works.
Thanks, Rhonda. God bless you. Thanks.